Returning home for a college break, I felt this pull to visit my childhood room. I wanted to see it again, to feel the familiarity and comfort it once offered. But as soon as I mentioned it, my mom warned me not to go in there. Her voice was calm, but something in her tone caught my attention. My dad chimed in, saying it was just being used for storage now, but he couldn't quite meet my eyes. It left me with this uneasy feeling, like there was something left unsaid. That night, when I finally got the chance, I went in anyway. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, maybe just a stack of boxes or old furniture. But what I saw made me freeze, and within minutes, I was dialing 911. I came back home tired, my head pounding, and my phone almost out of battery. I was just thinking about lying down in my old bed and lighting that cheap lavender candle I left on the windowsill last summer. It was late, but not suspiciously so. The house was quiet in that kind of way where everything seems paused, waiting. My parents opened the door like it was any other day. My mom smiled and my dad joked about my heavy suitcase. I was too tired to do anything but nod and step inside, mentally calculating how much sleep I'd missed that week. Probably about 10 hours short. Everything seemed normal, but that made it feel even stranger. There was no tension, no awkwardness, no weird glances, just the clean smell of fresh laundry and a spotless hallway. I told them I was going to drop my bag in my room, not even thinking about it. That's when things shifted. My mom quickly told me not to go in there. Her words were too quick, almost rehearsed. My dad added it was just for storage now, but there was a tightness in his voice. Not panic, but like he wasn't sure which way this conversation was headed. I paused, not because I wanted to make a big deal out of it, but because it felt so out of place. My mom quickly added that it was only temporary, brushing it off like it was nothing. I'd sleep in the guest room this time, they said. They moved on, but I couldn't. My old room, the one place in the house that felt like mine, was suddenly off limits. No reason, no warning, just closed. I didn't push it. I followed them to the guest room, acting like I didn't care, but inside I was churning. The guest room was nothing but a folded couch and an odd smell that hadn't been there before. There was a blanket, but no pillow, no lamp, nowhere to hang my clothes. I sat down and the springs creaked more than I expected. My mom asked if it was okay. I said it was, but it wasn't. The rest of the night passed quietly. We had dinner, but it felt like we were all going through the motions. They asked about school. I answered. My dad made some comment about gas prices. My mom laughed at something I don't even remember. It felt like we were all acting out a script we didn't believe in anymore. I tried to go to bed early, but ended up staring at the ceiling. The room was cold, my back ached, and there was a strange noise coming from the wall. Pipes, maybe, or something else. And I kept thinking about that door, why it was blocked, what they could possibly be hiding. It might sound minor, but it didn't feel that way. Something was off. Sometime after midnight, I got up. I didn't bother checking the time. I just had to see it, needed to know what was behind that door. The hallway was dim, silent. I walked slowly, not wanting to wake anyone, but also because I was nervous about what I might find. The boxes, the ones that had been stacked in front of my door earlier, were gone. Just gone. I stared at the door, then reached for the handle, locked. My room never had a lock before, not once, not even when I begged for one in high school. I stood there too long, just staring, before I remembered the old hiding spot, back hallway, behind the laundry shelf. That's where they always kept the extra keys. I went there, reached behind the panel, and there it was, a new, shiny key, taped in the usual spot. I wasn't sure what I expected, maybe that it wouldn't be there. I remember standing there, key in hand, just outside the door. It's funny how you imagine these moments, thinking maybe you'd just freeze or run away, but I didn't. I pushed the key into the lock, turned it, and heard that click. It was open. I took a breath, the kind you take when you know everything's about to change. and then I stepped inside. The air felt stale, unmoved for weeks, and there was this smell, dust, and something else I couldn't quite place. It was like stepping into a different world, one that had been waiting for me, untouched. Once inside, I just stopped. My whole body seemed to freeze up. It was all there, everything I didn't want to see, everything I hoped was just a misunderstanding. But it wasn't. It wasn't just some forgotten storage box or old furniture left to gather dust. It was exactly what I feared it would be. Within minutes, I found myself outside again, phone in hand, calling 911. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't bang on their door or scream about what I'd found. I just waited for the police, keeping my eyes forward, not daring to look back. Not yet. I think about it a lot now, how I never suspected anything was wrong. That's the insidious part about certain families. They don't show you the cracks. They don't lock you in a basement or scream in your face. They make spaghetti dinners and smile when they ask about your day at school. They make it easy to believe that the unease you feel is your fault. Growing up, I'd have told you everything was fine, even good. I was the younger sister, and Vivian, she was the older one. The rules were simple. She went first, and I watched. Vivian had the louder voice, the better grades, the hair that always seemed to shine. She wore blazers to school dances and made it look effortless. From a young age, she knew what she wanted: journalism, travel, maybe a master's degree someday. Everyone around her nodded in agreement and opened doors for her. I didn't mind, not really. I played my music, kept my head down, and learned how to blend into the background, but even then, I noticed things. Our mom always baked Vivian's favorite dessert and somehow forgot mine. Dad would cut me off mid-sentence to ask Vivian if she needed anything. Once, I mustered the courage to say, "I feel like she's your favorite." But they just laughed it off, like I'd made some adorable, naive observation. Mom said I was imagining it, and Dad added that I was being dramatic. I learned pretty quickly not to voice those thoughts again. Things became clearer in college. Vivian had most of her tuition covered by our parents. Not all, but enough that she could afford to intern during the summers instead of working retail jobs. I asked them once if they could help me too, just a little, maybe with a textbook or two, but Mom's reply was, "We wish we could, sweetie," in a tone that made me feel like I'd asked for the moon. So I worked in cafes, took on admin assistant gigs, and even held a tutoring job I despised. Meanwhile, Vivian was off studying abroad in Florence, claiming it deepened her understanding of narrative. I, on the other hand, was becoming intimately familiar with overdraft fees. Now Vivian's finishing her degree and talks about taking a year off before grad school to travel, decompress, see the world. It's all she talks about, like it's her life's mission. Thailand, Morocco, the Galapagos Islands. She says it'll make her a better writer. Maybe it will. But what really gets me is how excited our parents are, glowing with the kind of energy that says, "We'll make it happen." They've already started discussing logistics, money, flights. I overheard them suggesting that maybe Grandma could help. That was the moment I stopped in my tracks. Not because they were asking Grandma to help Vivian, but because they were assuming they'd use part of Grandma's inheritance to fund the trip, as if her passing was just a transaction waiting to be completed. Grandma's 89, still sharp, still with us. It was the inevitability of it that struck me, like they were just waiting. What they don't understand, what I've never told them, and maybe never will, is that I'm not jealous of Vivian's plane tickets. I'm angry because of Grandma. We share something, a bond that no one else in the family even pretends to understand. You know, growing up, I always watched Grandma with this quiet awe. She was this incredible musician, the kind of person who didn't just play music, but who lived it. Her hands moved across the cello or piano keys like they were an extension of her own body, and even before I could reach the pedals, she was teaching me. I remember sitting beside her, trying to keep up with her fluid movements. I was 10 then, and everything about music felt magical, like a secret language only we shared. One day, She let me sit with her while she opened a cabinet I'd never seen unlocked before. Inside were instruments that seemed to have stories of their own. Violas with intricate inlays, flutes with carved keys, and a mandolin that looked like it belonged in a museum. She explained that these were passed down, cherished but never sold, played with care and respect. Years went by, and the weekend I came home from college, she told me they were meant for me. It wasn't presented as some grand gift, but more like she was handing over a baton in a relay race, a continuation of something much larger than us. It was sacred, not secret, so I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents. But secrets have a way of coming out, don't they? And when my parents found out, they were furious. I overheard Dad late one night talking about how it wasn't fair to just give it all to me. Mom agreed, saying those things should be split evenly among the family, which really meant including my sister Vivian. Vivian, who didn't share our musical passion, who once thought an oboe was whatever instrument sounds like a goose. I felt this burning need to scream, to argue, but Grandma didn't back down. She was firm, saying those instruments weren't for sale, that she wasn't dead yet, and that they were hers to decide upon. I stayed silent because I knew she was right. Then everything took a turn. Grandma had to spend a night at the hospital, nothing serious, just a precaution, they said. But when she got back, she found the back window shattered and the entire collection of instruments gone. She called me and I heard something I never had before, her crying. Not at funerals, not even when Grandpa passed or when cancer took her best friend. But this broke her. "They're gone," she kept saying. She thought she'd have time to show me, to teach me more. I tried to comfort her, suggesting insurance might help, but we both knew it wasn't about the money. Just 2 days later, she fell ill again, weaker this time, and was admitted back to the hospital. The doctor said stress was worsening her condition. I took time off work to be with her, sitting by her side as she slept in restless intervals. It wasn't just the theft. It was the loss of something that had been passed down through generations, lost on her watch, under her own roof. I felt this intense rage toward whoever did it. And then, I found out who it was. In a moment of desperation, I opened a door I wasn't supposed to, the one leading to my old room. There they were, the instruments, every single one, hidden under a tarp. They hadn't been stolen. They'd been hidden. 5 minutes later, I was outside, my breathing uneven, dialing 911. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way, but I didn't know what soon meant on a quiet street, where nothing usually happened, especially not past midnight. But I stayed outside, not out of bravery or for dramatic effect. I just couldn't go back inside. I couldn't look at the kitchen, walk the hallway, or see my parents asleep while Grandma was in a hospital bed because of what they'd done. I stood next to the mailbox, my jacket half zipped, fiddling with my phone like that might somehow make time pass faster. Every so often, I glanced back at the house. From the outside, it looked perfectly normal, all the lights off except the porch light. That was sort of the point, wasn't it? Everything looked fine from the outside. The patrol car arrived exactly 28 minutes after I made the call. I counted each minute as if somehow that would make it all feel more under control. There weren't any sirens blaring or lights flashing, just the soft hum of the engine and the crunch of the tires as they pulled up to the curb. 2 officers stepped out, one older, one younger. They didn't seem surprised to see me there, standing out in the cold, clutching my phone like it was my lifeline. One of them asked if I was the one who called, and I nodded. They didn't pry into why I was outside. I started explaining everything to them, calmly, like I was recounting someone else's story, not my own. I talked about the instruments from my childhood room, the break-in that wasn't really a break-in. I told them about my grandma, her hospital stays, the insurance claim that felt like a weight I couldn't lift. My voice felt detached, like it belonged to someone else. Someone who wasn't trying to keep from falling apart. They asked if I wanted to remain anonymous, and I shook my head. I just didn't care anymore. It was like they understood, maybe because they'd heard it all before, maybe because they hadn't. One officer stayed beside me while the other walked up to the house and rang the doorbell. I watched as the lights inside started coming on, one by one, first upstairs, then in the hallway, and finally by the front door. My dad answered looking like he'd just woken up, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. There was confusion on his face, not fear, not guilt, just confusion. My mom appeared behind him, pulling a sweater over her shoulders. She seemed even more lost than he did. I couldn't hear what was being said. The officer kept his voice low, and I stood on the sidewalk, not hiding, just trying to stay out of the way. It was strange to watch them from a distance, as if they were people I didn't know, in a house that wasn't my own. The officers went inside, and the door closed behind them. I stood there, arms wrapped around myself to keep warm. My feet were aching from the cold, and my hands had gone numb ages ago. I kept my eyes on the house, not knowing what was happening inside, not wanting to guess. Part of me expected shouting, the sound of doors slamming, but it was quiet. Just the play of shadows behind the curtains, an occasional silhouette moving, and then nothing. I thought about Grandma, what all of this would have done to her if she had known, what it already had done. 20 minutes later, another vehicle arrived. This one was different, larger, with a cargo area ready to carry evidence. 2 more officers emerged, exchanged a few words with the first pair, and then went inside. It wasn't long before they started bringing out the instrument cases, handling them with care as if they understood their worth, as if someone had told them that these weren't just objects but pieces of a life. I stayed still, watching each case come out, the violin, the cello, the mandolin, all carried with respect, as if each one had a story to tell. The front door opened again, and this time my mom stepped out. Her eyes scanned the yard, passing over me at first, and then she saw me. Her gaze locked on mine, and in that moment, there was nothing but a cold, silent recognition between us. Then my dad came out, standing just behind her. They both looked at me, and even though no words were spoken, I felt everything they thought. I was the betrayer now, the one who had turned on them, a stranger in my own family. I didn't look away. I just held their stare, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. Eventually, one of the officers came back to me. He said everything had been cataloged and they were just finishing up the report. I nodded, mentioning that my bag was still inside and that I didn't want to go in alone. He understood and walked in with me. Inside, it was as quiet as it had been before. Nothing had changed in the guest room. My bag was sitting there, already packed, waiting for me to take it and leave. I remember that day vividly, the day everything changed. I left the house without a backward glance, feeling the weight of silence from my parents standing in the hallway. They just watched me leave, not uttering a single word. It was strange not to look back at them, but I felt no need to. Outside, I saw the last of the instrument cases being loaded into the second vehicle. Papers were signed, and the clipboard was passed one final time between the officers. It was all so procedural, so final. One of the officers asked if I had a place to stay. I shook my head. I didn't have a plan, not really. I asked if they could take me to the hospital. He nodded, and I got into the back seat of the car, closing the door with a sense of finality. The drive was silent, almost like a pause in reality. I didn't look back at the house. There was nothing there for me anymore. When we arrived at the hospital, it was just after 6. I had my bag with me, but it felt like an anchor, heavy with everything that had just happened. I walked into the hospital, feeling the sterile air hit my face, and asked which floor my grandma was on. She was still in her room, surrounded by too many machines, but she was awake. As soon as I entered, she looked up and smiled, as if nothing had happened, as if everything were normal. I sat beside her, took her hand, and told her they found the instruments. There was a moment of relief in her eyes as she closed them and exhaled slowly. "Thank God," she said. I didn't tell her who had taken them or where they were found, just that they were safe now. That was all she needed to know. She squeezed my hand gently and told me she wanted me to have them, that it was always the point. I understood. She leaned back against the pillow and we sat in silence. A nurse came in later to check her vitals, giving a reassuring smile. If she stays calm, the nurse said, she'll recover. I nodded, feeling a small glimmer of hope. Around 7:30, I stepped outside, needing air, needing space. My phone was buzzing incessantly. There were 47 missed calls, countless texts, and voicemails. Mom, Dad, Vivian, over and over. As I stared at the screen, it lit up again. Mom was calling. I hesitated but answered. Her voice came through, loud, rushed, and furious. She was asking how I could do this to them. I listened, feeling a mix of emotions. I didn't say anything. They were the ones who called the police, who embarrassed themselves. I told her they hid the collection, lied about it being gone, and submitted a false insurance claim. My dad cut in, saying Grandma was fine, that she didn't die, but she could have. There was a silence on the line, a heavy pause. Then Mom spoke again, her voice shaking, accusing me of always turning things around, making myself the victim. But I wasn't the victim. Grandma was. The words, "You're not our daughter anymore," came flatly. I didn't respond, just let the silence linger. Then Dad muttered something under his breath, something about her being old anyway. It slipped out, and I don't think he meant to say it aloud, but it hit me like a punch. Something in me shut down, went quiet. I realized then they were waiting for her to die. That's what this was about. Neither of them denied it, and I hung up, blocking both numbers. A few minutes later, Vivian called. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. Her tone was different, like she was trying to sound calm but failing. She said she heard what I did, accusing me of calling the cops on our own parents. They committed insurance fraud, I told her. They almost killed Grandma. But Vivian brushed it off, saying it wasn't like that they just needed the money. No one was hurt, she argued, but Grandma was hurt. She's old, she said again, as if that justified everything. She asked if I was really going to throw away the whole family over this. I didn't respond. She accused me of being dramatic, of acting like the world was out to get me. I ended the call and blocked her too. I sat down on a bench outside the hospital, feeling the weight of it all. No family, no more noise, just air. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I didn't feel liberated or strong. I just felt an emptiness, a quietness that settled over me. And in that moment, I realized that everything had changed, and there was no going back. It's been 6 months since I made my decision. I stopped waiting for their words, and I stopped sending mine. The silence has become a familiar companion, one I've grown used to. The last piece of news came through a whisper from my cousin, a short, almost apologetic text. They pleaded guilty, sentenced to a year of house arrest, 400 hours of community service, and now they're felons. They wear ankle monitors, and their lives have shrunk to the boundaries of their home. The neighbors who once greeted them warmly now avoid them, crossing the street, pretending not to see. Their lives have changed in ways they never imagined, and it's all out there for the world to see. No one visits anymore. They've become unwelcome in their own community. They stood in court, reading a statement of apology, but it wasn't for Grandma. She wasn't there. It was for the judge, the courtroom, the official records. Our family didn't show up, not even Vivian. She vanished from social media for a while, then reappeared as if nothing had happened. A new profile picture, an inspirational quote about finding inner peace, and comments turned off. It's as if she believes that if she curates her life tightly enough, the truth will forget her part in all this. Grad school is on hold. The big trip never happened. Her last update was that she's back home, not working, not posting much, not really making plans. But I've stopped watching. I'm finished with that chapter of my life. Grandma just celebrated her 90th birthday last week. She's home, she's healthy, and she's sharper than most people I know in their 30s. We organized a small birthday party for her, but it was full of warmth and love. Her closest friends were there, the ones who never stopped calling, even during her toughest times. Some of her former music students came too, bringing their own kids. Perhaps they wanted their children to meet the woman who once taught them to play each note with meaning. She wore her favorite cardigan, the one with the pearl buttons, and laughed throughout the afternoon. It wasn't the polite laughter you force out at gatherings. It was genuine, joyful laughter, the kind I hadn't heard from her in years. Her instruments were there, back in her possession, no longer evidence, no longer locked away in a case file. We set them up in a corner, not to be played, just to be there. I didn't expect anyone to touch them. But as the light streamed through the curtains, Grandma got up from her chair and walked over. She didn't ask, didn't hesitate. She sat at the piano as if it had been calling to her all day. The room went silent, and then she began to play. It wasn't a full song, just enough to make your chest tighten and your throat constrict with the effort of holding back tears. She played as if she was still 60, as if the past year hadn't taken anything from her. When she finished, one of her friends smiled and said, "90 looks good on you." Grandma grinned and replied, "Might have another decade in me if nobody tries to kill me again." The room erupted with laughter, but I didn't laugh. I believed her. She's 90, and she's still here, still playing, still sharp. Some people think that growing old means you can stop showing up for someone, as if reaching a certain age makes them optional or easier to forget. But no one gets to decide how much time someone has left just because it fits better into their own life. Grandma might live to 95 or 100, maybe even longer. I'm not counting. I'm just showing up. She doesn't talk about my parents anymore, or Vivian, and I don't either. The instruments are home, the music has returned, and for us, that's enough. I've wondered if I went too far or not far enough, but in the end, it doesn't matter. Grandma's still here, and that's what counts.